Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio. I'm John Marino, and WestchesterTalkRadio.com is produced by Sharc, S-H-A-R-C. That's Sharc with a C, not a K, creative. And we are made possible by our good friends at Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, powering Westchester right through April of 2021. They'll keep our lights on. Lipolis Electric, you are never left in the dark at Lipolis. And by Hightower Westchester at Hightower, they manage your wealth to a fiduciary standard. Yes, they do. We are joined here at WestchesterTalkRadio.com by Rich Leaf. Now, Rich Leaf is a legendary member of the Westchester sports community for many a decade now. For example, he is the moderator of the Con Edison Sports Award program, which honors the weekly student-athlete of the week via Con Edison here in Westchester. Been doing that since 1951, that program. Originally, Bob Wolf was the master of ceremonies back in 1978 when our good friend Bob passed away a few years back. Rich took over the program, and with that, also becoming the master of ceremonies of the annual end-of-year banquet honoring all of the weekly Con Edison winners from the year gone by. He is also a longtime Westchester sportscaster, worked the old WVIP 1310 AM in Mount Kisco, and nowadays the radio broadcast of the weekly Con Ed Sports Award show is heard, hosted by Rich on the Peak 107.1 FM and on WHUD 100.7 FM up and down the Hudson Valley. He is also the Master of Ceremonies and Public Address Announcer for the annual Final Four Section 1 Westchester Boys and Girls Basketball Tournament at the Westchester County Center in White Plains, and handles public address for the annual Slam Dunk Holiday Tournament during the holidays in late December, week between Christmas and New Year's at the County Center as well. Also, public address announcer for a variety of sports and schools around Westchester. Rich, also a highly respected, regarded, and much sought after soccer official in Section 1 and up and down the Hudson Valley as well, too. And to boot, he is a member of the Westchester Sports Hall of Fame, class of 2017. Rich Leaf, what do you do for an encore?
Hey, John, nice to see you as always. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us here at Westchester Talk Radio. Now, we get word today, ironically, we're doing this today, that, first of all, the annual banquet, which you host and play Master of Ceremonies for, was canceled. It's always in early June, first Wednesday in June every year. We bring everybody back, all the award winners from the year gone by, about 36, 37 in all, I guess. And now we get word about this event will go on this year, just in a different way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, John, I have to say that my emceeing of the Con Edison banquet, I certainly have learned a lot from you, seeing you in action when you MC the Westchester County Hall of Fame induction every year. You do a great job with that. So thank you for all of the guidance I've received from you. And, of course, watching the one and only Bob Wolf do it for so many years. Bob passing away summer of 2017. And that June, he hosted the banquet, read all 36 of the winners' bios, and then wrapped it up with playing on his ukulele and singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." I mean, just a memorable time. But unfortunately, like many other great events, the banquet this year was postponed due to COVID. But we have put together a virtual banquet with the help of LOHUD, and that will be airing. We just got word today, as you mentioned, on Thursday, July 9th at 7 p.m. on LOHUD.com and also on the LOHUD.com Facebook page. So it'll be something similar, not quite as extensive. I had to prepare. We had 26 winners this year. Our last winner was March 12th or 13th, whatever that week was, when everything started to happen. And I prepared 26 bios, and I had to keep them under a minute, which was very, very difficult because, as you know from your participation in the Con Ed program, a lot of these kids are worthy of a segment on 60 Minutes, let alone a 60-minute bio. But I was able to do it, and that'll be part of the virtual banquet. And they will also be announcing the winner of the scholarship awards that are given out for various legendary members of the Westchester sports community, Red Klein, Tony Sabella, to name a few. So it should be pretty good. Again, like everything else, John, it's the first time we've had to take care of it this way, and hopefully it'll look good when we see it on July 9th. And I know LOHUD does a great job. They produced a lot of virtual graduations and sports awards for the various schools, which I've seen many of them, and they do a great job. So I'm looking forward to it.
You talk about the accomplishments of all these kids, the weekly winners. Now, I had the honor of being the producer and engineer for the show for many years with Bob Wolf from the late 80s into the late 90s. And you would listen to these kids week by week. You sit on the committee and help select the weekly winner, which I would get to do from time to time. And you'll look the ballots over, and the ballots are like this. They're from the floor to the ceiling, what all these kids have done. I remember after one show in particular saying to one of the kids, I thought I did a lot in high school. I look at what you guys do week after week, and I feel guilty. You make me want to go back and make me want to do so much more, and that's what this is about.
That's so true, John. I mean, I read the ballots. I was involved with that part of it for 10, 12 years. And you'd read a ballot and you'd say to yourself, you know what, this kid can't be real. Somebody's making this up. You'd read all the accomplishments on one page, then you'd turn the page and there was a 2400 SAT. I mean, come on, no kid could be this good. But of course, they all were. And continuing this year, we have some terrific kids. We have kids going to the service academies and doing some research. I'll tell you, John, there was one young man I interviewed. He actually was a valedictorian at Hendrick Hudson High School, James Riley, and he was involved in some scientific research. And I almost hate to admit this, I couldn't even pronounce it, let alone understand it. And he did a pretty good job succinctly of telling me what it was all about. But something with brain cells. I mean, these kids, holy cow. And I feel the same way. I thought I was pretty good in high school, but, nothing compared to some of these young men and women.
We talk about scientific studies and we hear one side of the brain is artistic. Some people lean that way. The other side is scientific, math-oriented. Many lean that way. I have to say, all of these kids lean both ways. It seems impossible, but they all do. They excel in every area, athletically and academically.
Well, as you know, John, again, you've been involved with the program. I always think as I walk out of the meeting every Wednesday, you get 7 or 8 ballots, sometimes 10, and you can only pick one. And, I remember when I was involved, I say, all right, I can narrow it down to my top 7, and, you think about so many of these kids who really are worthy of the award, but we just don't have the room or the space or the time to honor all of them. And it's just a very, very tough decision. And there's usually one little thing on that ballot that will push a kid over the top. But I kind of feel badly for the ones that don't get selected because they are almost as good as the winners that we do select.
Mm-hmm. I remember remarking to someone once a number of years back and saying, I think, and this is after being on a committee one week where we had a really tough choice, about 15 ballots to go through. And as we left the meeting, I said to another committee member, I think what it comes down to really is just to be nominated, just to have your ballot here amongst the committee. You won. You already won by having your name up in the mix there to win the weekly award, but you're a winner already, and there's no doubt about that.
No question about that, John.
Rich Leaf is the moderator of the weekly Con Edison Sports Award Luncheon, selecting Westchester Student-Athlete of the Week, and the moderator also, too, and the host and MC of the weekly, like we said, the luncheon and the annual banquet at the end of the year that honors the weekly winners, and it's going to be virtual this year, and that's great. Rich, I have to ask you, you talked about the 30-second vignettes, 1-minute vignettes, etc. you're doing on everybody. Do you, for the virtual event, have to put everything together one by one now the way you would do as if we were having the regular banquet at the beginning of June? You talked about the vignettes, but now it's an actual show. Do you have to go through the whole process again, top to bottom?
Oh, absolutely. I took the ballot and, went over the highlights and, typed something up and, saved it on my computer and, modified it as the time. I started in early May as things were starting to wind down. And I got great cooperation from the athletic directors and coaches with updates. You interview kids in the fall. Many of those kids don't have their college plans set yet, and they're going to play another sport, and they get postseason awards. So it's pretty up to date in terms of what these kids have accomplished through March when high school sports virtually stopped, as did school.
You bring up a key point about colleges. A lot of what goes on with the committee and with the weekly award helps influence colleges as to who they select and who they don't. And when they see what these kids do, it's not who they don't, it's we have to have that kid.
Yeah, well, it's certainly an important part of it, no question.
Mm-hmm. Rich, how long have you been involved with the program for? When was day one for you?
I was trying to figure that out, John. I would say between 12 and 15 years, probably closer to 12 years, being part of the panel, selecting the ballots. And this was my third year in filling in for Bob Wolf. And, I say filling in, I don't use the word replace or anything like that. I was just very happy that Con Edison had the confidence in me to allow me to continue the great work that Bob had done. And hopefully it's certainly not the same without a guy. I mean, you don't know too many people that are in two halls of fame, baseball and basketball. And Bob Wolf just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. I mean, just
someone who worked in this business for 70 years.
Oh, it's just incredible. And the thing about him, John, was that I don't know if I've ever met a more modest person. I mean, all the accolades and all the awards and everything. He'll say, "Hey, I was in the right place at the right time," or the sponsor liked me. And some of the stories that he would tell, and he's written several books. I can't recall the name of them. I have a couple of them that he autographed for me, and I treasure that. But I don't know if we have time. But one of the greatest stories he told was he did the first anchoring, the first televised presidential inauguration, and it was in January of 1953. President Eisenhower. And it was, the parade down Pennsylvania Avenue, open bleachers like we would see at any high school. And the president was sitting there in his box, but totally unprotected. And there was a group from Texas that came to honor him, a dozen or so cowboys in the cowboy regalia riding horses. And one of them took out his lasso, twirled his lasso, and actually lassoed the president of the United States right there in the bleachers. I mean, can you imagine anything like, well, it couldn't happen today, but if it did, holy cow.
Right, without a doubt, forget about it today. But Bob always was, like he said, right place, right time, right there, as it turned out to be able to tell us a story like that decades later. Almost 80 years, as I think about it now, in the business overall. And his career began, talk about a lucky break in a way. He was a baseball player at Duke University in 1939, and he broke his ankle, I believe, sliding into second base.
Correct.
And the guy who did the Duke baseball games on the radio then said, "Hey, kid, you want to stay busy? Come and join me in the booth and do the games with me." Bob said, "Okay." And a legend was born. What a story.
Well, he tells some great stories about his days as the announcer for the Washington Senators on the old black and white TV. And in those days, they had to do the commercials were live.
Right.
So Bob had to learn how to pour a glass of beer, with the head coming right up to the top of the glass.
He told that story frequently. Yeah.
The best story he tells, he had one of the big sponsors of baseball in those days were cigars, White Owl cigars. And not only did he have to smoke on the air, which he detested, but the first time he did it, he took out the cigar and took out his lighter and lit the cigar. And his director or his producer said, "Hey, Bob, you got to take the cellophane off first." I mean, just great stories like that. Just what an amazing person. And just to conclude, all of his interviews, I would say from Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth to Derek Jeter are all now in the Library of Congress. He donated all of them to the Library of Congress down in Washington, and they're there for if anybody cares to drop down there and listen to some great stuff.
And somebody who had the opportunity to announce two of the most important moments in history in football, the Alan Amici touchdown, Colts against the Giants, 58, and the Don Larson no-hitter in 1956 in the World Series.
Well, that voice, every time I hear that voice and watch that film, I say, hey, I know that guy,
Right.
That's those are two classic games, no question, John.
From a personal perspective, too, I remember it was the night of the banquet, 1993 it was, and the banquet ended, and we all stepped back for a brew or whatever into the bar at the Rytown Hilton, and the Knicks and Bulls playoff game was on that night. It was the end of the game. It was the Charles Smith special game as we watched Charles Smith, to me, get fouled over and over again by Scottie Pippen. Bob and I were shoulder to shoulder watching the game. And I said to myself, who would have ever believed years ago if I told them that 20 years from now, I'm going to be next to Bob Wolf, the guy we watch on TV, listen to on the radio, do the Knicks and Rangers games. Here, he and I are together for one of the most important moments in Knicks history. Who could have possibly ever imagined that I'd be lucky enough to be in a position like this? And I always remember that and thank the opportunity I had to be just standing next to Bob to watch that together with him. Game didn't work out the right way, but quite a moment for me personally. And for Bob, it was just another run-of-the-mill event for him.
Well, talking about his broadcasting career, I don't know how many people know this, but one of his favorite events to broadcast every year was the Westminster
dog show.
Dog show.
Yeah.
And he said used to tell us he used to sing to the dogs. Which only Bob Wolf could get away with. But another great story. I remember he was supposed to fly to Chicago to do a Knicks Bulls game, and his flight was canceled because of a snowstorm. So what he did, they took him up to the very top of the Empire State Building, put him in a small room, and of course in those days most of the television signals came in through the Empire State Building. And he sat there watching the game on a very small black and white screen, and he did the play-by-play, watching it on TV, from Chicago, and they had crowd noise, and I don't think anybody knew the difference because I'm sure he was equally good whether he was doing it from the TV or doing it live.
Look at it this way, Bob was a forerunner in that area too, because with the pandemic and sports hopefully coming back, games may have to be done this way. Basketball, baseball, hockey, etc. Sit in the studio like we are in our studios, and we call the game this way, just watching what we see on a TV.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. Rich Leaf is the moderator of the weekly Con Ed Sports Award luncheon, where the Student Athlete of the Week in Westchester, sponsored by Con Edison, is selected, and Master of Ceremonies for the annual end-of-year banquet as well, too, which will be held virtually this year. Rich, what has it been like for you as the moderator of this event now for the past few years? You touched upon it, how weekly you see all these great kids come across. How does this make you feel to be in this position, to be able to be part of this on a weekly basis?
Well, I'll tell you something, John. As you said at the beginning of our interview, and I really appreciate all of your wonderful comments. I've been involved with high school athletics, getting on close to 50 years, as a coach, as an announcer, as an official, as a spectator. But nothing that I have ever done has given me more pleasure or more reward than sitting down each week and spending a few moments with these kids. It's one thing to see them on paper, and that was a lot of fun also. And seeing you each week and the other members of the panels and the athletic directors. But to sit down and meet these kids and talk to them and get to know them, we spend about a half an hour before the actual interview, and then we go in and do the interview, and and we talk a little more, and I even keep up with some of them on social media. I've read some of their soccer games. In fact, this past year, I interviewed Troy Hupstead from Mount Vernon High School, Con Edison Award winner. I interviewed him Thursday morning, and then Thursday night I announced his game at the county center, which was a new experience. So it's again, all the things that I've done in involving high school sports. Nothing has given me a bigger kick than being the MC of the Con Edison program.
I remember back in '94, there was a swimmer from Rye High School. Last name was Reeves. I forget his first name after all these years, but he went on to swim at the University of Florida. And he came in, sat down for the interview. Bob interviewed him. I engineered the interview. And after the interview, Bob and I both asked him, you have a shaved head. It seems to be the new fad amongst swimmers. We both noticed. And he said, yeah, a lot of swimmers are doing this. So we said, why? He said, because it makes us feel like with less hair on the head, it gives you an extra split second. It helps your time by an extra split second. And that can be the difference between winning and losing. And we both asked him, we said, do you think it really works? He said, I don't know if it does, but as long as you think it works, that's what we go with in the pool, and that's what we do. Great story that Bob was able to get out of this young man, Reeves.
Well, some of these kids are unbelievable. I remember another one that Bob interviewed. Bob, after the formal reading of the bios at the dinner, sometimes he would do a little ad-lib interview. He'd pick 3 or 4 of the kids that he was particularly interested in and call them to the microphone and ask them some questions. And there was this one kid one year, I think his last name was Miller. I'm not 100% sure. I do know he was a wrestler from Mount Vernon. And on his ballot, it stated that he was working on an alternative energy program. So this intrigued Bob, and Bob says, I see you're working on an alternative energy project. Would you like to tell us about this? So the kid thought for a minute and looked around, and he said, with all of these Con Edison people around here, I think I'd rather not.
Might have to get a copyright first, right?
Yeah, what great poise for a 16, 17-year-old kid, 300 people staring at him. And you know what? Let's Con Edison keep guessing on this. I thought that was just great.
He kept his secrets to himself.
Absolutely.
Rich Leaf, tell us again about the virtual event this year.
Well, the virtual event will air, I don't know if air is the correct word. It'll be available starting
It is air. Yeah.
Okay, air Thursday, July 9th, 7 o'clock on lowhud.com and also on the LowHUD Facebook page. And as we speak, invitations are going out to the various winners and schools. And you probably have one, John, somewhere in your email. I just got mine a little while ago. And inviting people to tune in and take a look at it. I think it'll be about 45 minutes, which is down from the 2.5 hours that we usually run. And again, we had to cut down the bios to strictly a minute or less, which was tough because again, you can talk a lot about these kids, but under the circumstances, I'm hoping it'll be something that will especially that the winners will enjoy. And be able to watch with their families and their friends and enjoy it.
And all the awards will be given out. The annual awards also.
Yes, the scholarships will be given out as well. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about those awards, if you would.
Well, those awards are named after some of the various important people around. I believe they run from $5,000 to $10,000. There's 4 or 5 of them. And as I said, Red Klein, there's one named after him, Doc Blanford. Doc Blanford, who was a longtime track coach, I believe, at Edgemont.
The football field there on the track is named after him.
And, the legendary Tony Sabella, who football, basketball official, longtime superintendent of schools in Bedford, and then in other school districts as well. He was just an amazing person, it's every bit helps for these kids, going on to college, and so those are always highly anticipated awards.
Tony passed away more than a decade ago, and yet he was one of our more popular, maybe the most popular and colorful character we've come across in all our years with the program.
Well, I got to know him very well, and his bark was much worse than his bite, and he used to get on my case, at the county center. He'd say, Leaf, we gotta shorten these announcements. We gotta get these games moving. So So I said, all right, Tony, I'll just announce the first names. That'll cut it in half. And he chuckled and walked away. And basically, if Tony got on your case, you knew you were.
He liked you, no doubt.
He liked you. Yep, exactly.
He only did that with those that he liked, and he knew he could get away with certain things with. No question about that. In fact, he was able to play that up every week at the luncheon too.
Yeah,
life overall. He was a larger-than-life figure, I think, no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Was, and like you are too, Rich Leaf, no doubt about that. You have a list of accomplishments from here to there and everywhere and back, and I know that list is going to keep on growing. Thank you for all you've done the past half century, basically, for athletics and academics in Westchester, what you do on a weekly basis with the Con Ed Sports Award Luncheon, what you do annually, hosting the banquet, etc., out there on the soccer fields, your election to selection to the Westchester Sports Hall of Fame 3 years ago. Much deserved, a long time coming. Glad you finally got in, and rightfully so. And all the best to you, Rich Leaf, and we'll see you on July 9th online by aloha.com for the annual, this time a virtual, Con Ed Sports Award banquet, the end of year banquet. Rich Leaf, we thank you from Westchester Talk Radio.
John, thank you very much for those very kind words. I really appreciate it. One of the great things about being involved in all of this is knowing people like you and working with you. You do a terrific job as well. And as I said, if people want to see a real MC job, they should check out one of the Hall of Fame award banquets, induction banquets, because you are just amazing there. So keep up your good work as well.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much for the kind words. And I do have to say it's an honor and a pleasure on my part to be able to sit down with a legend. You are a real legend, a legend like you. Thank you, Rich. Much appreciated. And I hope we get to do this again real soon.
Thank you very much, John, and be well.
Yep, and hopefully we'll see each other at a luncheon in the fall if the situation allows us to do that. I look forward to that.
So do I.
Thank you. You too, Rich Leaf, here on Westchester Talk Radio. That's Rich, L-E-A-F, Leaf. We are produced by Sharc, S-H-A-R-C, Creative, and we are WestchesterTalkRadio.com. Brought to you by, made possible by, our good friends around the area like Entergy, the Indian Point Energy Center, powering us in Westchester through April of 2021. Also by Wartburg, a healthcare and rehabilitation in Mount Vernon, by Park Sterling Realty, and by Michael Labriola Landscape Design and Construction. We are Westchester Talk Radio. All of our programming available on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube.